Yes, he did.
Donnybrook is made possible by the members of the 9 Network.
Thanks for joining us for this edition of Donnybrook. And next week, our schedule will be back to normal. Thanks for joining us on the 9 Network every week, wherever we are and whenever we are. Hey, let's meet the panelists who are about to discuss this week's regional issues, starting with the news director for the Big 550 KTRS. She is Wendy Wiese, along with Mr. Bill McClellan from the St. Louis Post-Dispatch. He's Ray Hartmann from the Big 550 KTRS and the Riverfront Times. And from the St. Louis American and 590 AM and 97.1 FM, Alvin Reid. We're going to start with you, Alvin, because you write about Dexter Fowler and Jack Flaherty of the Cardinals, who decided to take the night off last night during the Cardinals game because they were acting in solidarity with Jacob Blake, the Kenosha, Wisconsin man who was shot by police. Other athletes in different leagues have done the same thing. What did you write in this week's column?
Well, I just touched on the fact that, Dexter Fowler has never been a fan favorite in St. Louis. And I think there was a good chance he wouldn't be here next year. Now, I'm sure it's a 100% chance he won't be here next year. And Jack Flaherty is being recognized as the best young pitcher in Major League Baseball. And unfortunately, I think he assured himself of never being a fan favorite either. I think such a heavy portion of Cardinal Nation is so negative toward anything Black Lives Matter or what is perceived to be anti-police that, I think this is something that young Mr. Flaherty will have a tough time overcoming here in the city of St. Louis. And I will say that they're right, and they were following up on what started when the Milwaukee Bucks decided not to play their playoff game. The NBA didn't play. We had 6 teams, 3 games in Major League Baseball, shockingly, decide not to play, including the Milwaukee Brewers, obviously, because they're close to Kenosha. So it was probably one of the most important nights in the history of sports. I'm glad we had 2 St. Louis Cardinals involved in it.
I don't really think that it's going to – I don't agree. I mean, if Dexter Fowler leaves, he's had a couple of up and down seasons and so forth. I think about – you could go back to our heritage in the 40s and 50s when St. Louis was like at the back of the train in terms of racial progress and separate entrances. But when I think back – I think Cardinal Nation should be distinct from social media. I think you're absolutely right about your point that they're justified and they did get bombarded on social media. But Cardinal Nation, remember, next to Stan Musial, the most popular players in Cardinal history are Bob Gibson, Ozzie Smith, Willie McGee, Lou Brock. I don't think that St. Louis is like that when it comes to its African-American athletes. So I don't agree with you that it would affect them in that way.
Okay. Your experiences at the ballpark have been different than mine. Let's just put it that way.
Okay. And certainly the loudest voices will be against Flaherty and Fowler.
Good point. Oh, and your former Cardinal, current Chicago Cub, Jason Hayward, did not play last night. And I wonder about the reaction from the average Cub fan is to that, Bill.
Well, Alvin, I think that only history will tell us if last night was an important night. It all depends on what happens. And there have been a lot of symbolic actions taken in the last couple of months. But at some point, I think that there's going to have to be some sort of convention or meeting of people who can make a difference, whether that's through policy or legislation, and make a change. And if that doesn't happen, it could very well be that last night's
but the first time
event will go unnoticed.
The first time in the history of sports that different teams, different places, different races just decided we're not going to play our sport tonight. It has never happened. By the way, the NHL, this is on Thursday, the NHL is not playing tonight. Okay. Yeah. Now maybe they felt pressure or whatever, but nothing like this has ever happened before. And that's what makes it historic. That's what makes it important. Where it goes from here, who knows? But this is an important moment.
It is, and I agree with Alvin and that gentleman over Alvin's left shoulder was one of the people who was one of maybe the first athlete to make this kind of stand regarding the Vietnam War and his own getting rid of what he called his slave name. And then you have the Olympic athletes in the 60s holding the black fist on the medal stand. But really, we've never had an entire team. And it was interesting that it was on the anniversary of Colin Kaepernick taking a knee, which again was one guy. Think about this. This was all the teams, not all the teams, but a bunch of teams, all the NBA teams. And it happened on the night of the Republican National Convention. I think it was a significant statement. Now, I think a lot of be determined by the election as to what happens going forward, but I think it was a big deal.
What I thought was kind of interesting today was the Associated Press was reporting that the NBA Board of Governors were going to meet. The Players Association had decided, and this was all on, the condition of anonymity source to the Associated Press. The Players Association had decided that they wanted to go ahead and play tonight, but it sounded as if, right, guys, that the NBA Board of Governors, were they saying, no, we're just going to have these 3 games? They were going to postpone tonight's postseason. Was that correct?
That's correct. And apparently Michael Jordan stepped in and said, like, hey, we've got to work this out. But the players voted first that we're going to play. So, however you feel about that.
It was interesting that the Board of Governors said, no, we're not going to play tonight. That was the way the copy read to me.
Yeah, but that was Thursday. Yeah, tonight, I know people are watching this on different nights, but on Thursday night, it was agreed there'd be no games. But the players had said we're going to finish this. So it was it sounds like either compromise or maybe the left didn't know what the right was doing, but they're going to go on and finish the postseason.
Let me ask you this. If there were fans in the stands, would they be taking these actions?
Yes, I do. And it would be totally volatile. But that's not changing anything because people were crying real tears last night throughout network television. And it was for real, Charlie. And I know a lot of things to show, but what happened last night was for real. And
okay.
So, yes, it would have happened.
Now, in downtown St. Louis over the weekend, the mayor and the public safety director and the police chief shut the bridge from the Eads Bridge from East St. Louis into downtown St. Louis. At the same time, they put up a bunch of Jersey barriers all over the area. These are kind of like those barricades that prevent traffic. And I'm not sure who we're supposed to go to this one. Wendy, I think we're going to go to you on this one. There were some astounding statistics that were released by Kim Bell of the St. Louis Post-Dispatch in Sunday's edition. She pointed out that from January through June, the number of crimes against persons in downtown St. Louis increased 90%, and that in the month of June, there were more assaults in downtown St. Louis this June than in the previous 8 Junes combined in downtown. She also pointed out that there were 265 traffic stops in July of 2019 by police in downtown, and not one this year. So a lot to take apart there. Where do you want to start?
I'm just going to repeat what I said last week. And when I said it last week, I was unaware of the fact that the young woman who lost her life in the back of a pickup truck when the pickup truck was hit at a high rate of speed by another vehicle running a red light. She was thrown from the vehicle and killed, but she had a dream of joining the National Guard. That young life snuffed out, but it does kind of take me back to, and then this week with the storms and the hurricanes and the fact that other states are calling out their National Guard. I think that what is happening in the city of St. Louis is no less an emergency. The city of St. Louis is our hub, and everything spokes from our hub, if you will, like a bicycle. If that turns into a sinkhole, and I think it's very likely that it will. If that turns into a sinkhole, it pulls the entire region down. And so even if it's just for a couple of weeks, to let the barricades, sort of take effect, but somebody has to be down there. And the article did a great job of pointing out that because of the unrest, the few police officers that we do have had to be stationed elsewhere. So I'm fine if we're okay with Operation Legend. In this era, in this pandemic era, with crime in our most important part of this region, I think the National Guard is just fine.
Well, I agree with you about the importance of downtown being safe. And Kim Bell did one of the best stories I've seen in a long time in a Post-Dispatch. It was an amazingly good story. And I don't know her, but what a story.
Very nice, Ray.
Oh, no, I mean, but I'll say this, that I fundamentally disagree that we do not have enough police officers to deploy them and prioritize until this gets under control. Downtown is not that large an area. We've got, 1,000 police officers on the force. We're not right now, fortunately, in the middle of intense, large demonstrations on a nightly basis like we were some weeks ago. And I think that, of course, I don't think it's the most popular thing I'll say, but I think the long-term solutions about demilitarizing the gun situation in the city and doing some addressing of how we address crime by getting to its causes are the long-term solution. But in the short run, we have enough police officers. It's on John Hayden and Jimmy Edwards to get them deployed, and they need to.
Wendy, to your point about the National Guard, the idea of having military troops in the city, I think that would create more problems. There would suddenly be more protests. I mean, I think Ray is right that, and Alvin last week when we talked about it, that you just have to bring the police into downtown and retake downtown. You can't surrender it, but bringing military people in, I mean, it just sounds like a nightmare to me.
Well, I think right now, if you started on Thursday night and said Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, like I said, in Memphis, other places, your entertainment district police, I guarantee you there's 1,000 police officers out there right now. And I'm sure there's a large percentage that do have an extra job doing security or this or that. Okay. I guarantee you there's 1,000 police officers out there in this region who would be more than happy to get paid $25 an hour, not to combat individuals, but to come stand down there on every corner along Washington Avenue, all the way over to the stadium and a little bit north, and say, your job is to stand here, and if anything happens, like right in front of you, take care of it, but have them on every corner. And this stuff just doesn't happen. I mean, all you need is presence. I mean, you might not even really need a gun. I'd have one. I'm not, crazy, but you just need presence, and you create a way to find that presence. You want to ask the governor something, you want to help with crime, pay for this. Pay licensed professional police officers to come help us out on the weekends, not patrol, but just stand there. And I guarantee you all this stuff would stop.
I don't know, Alvin. I'm not sure people are lining up to be police officers in the city, and we'll talk about that in a moment. But also,
no, you're already a police officer.
Don't forget, we also have a rule in the city that you can't chase somebody if that person hasn't committed a felony. And, a lot of these acrobatic daredevils in their cars have come to St. Louis, and they know that they can kind of get away with this because they're not going to be chased. That's probably why the city put up the barricades, thinking, well, maybe they won't be able to escape if we have these Jersey barriers in the middle of Broadway and 4th Street. And I don't know if you guys have seen these, but they're really unusual.
Charlie,
looking.
I think you're giving a little bit too much credit to these individuals. They don't know nothing about no laws or anything like that.
Oh,
they
no, they do.
No, they don't.
They do. That's why they give chase. That's why they give chase.
Charlie, the idea that these are folks, that these idiots that are doing this I don't know what you're kidding.
Ray, I was gonna call them Cretans, but I was afraid to. So you
no, actually,
the people who have invested,
They did
the
not
people.
pour over the statutes.
No.
people who
Ray
have-
and
the
Alvin are
people who
exactly
have
wrong on this
invested-
one,
we're
and
not.
that's why St. Louis has become the mecca for these acrobatic bike riders.
I disagree with you, Charlie.
It's known all around the country. That's why they have their convention here in September.
All right. So
Ray, it's been in your
you guys
Ray,
are
it's been in your
laughing.
RFT. Your paper,
You're
Ray,
laughing,
has
and
written about
people
this.
The people who have bought property down there, who are on the, whether it's the lofts on Washington Avenue, the new high rise next to the ballpark, they're talking about leaving. Okay, so you're
because there's no police. You think they want to stay?
Yes!
So you think that?
yes, actually.
I'm not talking. We're
Okay.
talking about two different things. I'm
Well,
talking about the
now,
police.
next
Oh,
topic.
I think
Okay.
They really love that.
Hey,
The rest.
Ray, I want to go to you on the next topic because the mayor had a plan, along with the governor, to relax the residency requirement for police officers so they didn't have to live in the city of St. Louis. That was seen by some as an impediment to hiring police because the police want their kids to go to schools in Kirkwood or wherever. Okay. So it was passed and it'll be signed by the governor in Jefferson City, but you've got problems with that, correct?
It is on the November 3rd ballot. Now, understand, I have, since the days I lived in the city back in the 80s, been against the residency rule. I've never thought it made any sense. Having said that, getting rid of it, having Jefferson City, in the spirit of the dear departed Better Together, impose its will when it's on the ballot in less than 70 days in the city of St. Louis is one of the more astonishing acts of arrogance I can even.
Let me say this, Ray. You can't blame this on the Republican legislature when the mayor of St. Louis went down and asked for it. I mean, you can't. Well, to say that it's the arrogance of the legislature, the mayor of St. Louis went down. Blame the mayor. Blame the mayor.
I would, but let me tell you, I had on a legislator last night. I said, how do you think the folks in St. Charles County would react to it? And it's like, not too well. There isn't another county in the state that they would, and I don't disagree with you that Mayor Cruzen was wrong to ask, particularly when she tried to get through the Board of Aldermen and they said no. She should have had more respect. It was on the ballot and it should have been let to play out. And what's ironic is I happen to agree.
Well, I agree with all that, except I don't see how you blame the legislature for doing what the mayor asked.
They didn't have to listen
They
to her.
were supposed to tell her no? Yeah, I think they're like, no.
Yes, they would have told any other mayor no. They would have told Mayor Kate
Hey,
Ferraro
Ray,
no.
let me ask Ray a question. Ray, do you feel the same way about mask mandates, that it should be up to the counties to decide whether or not masks should be worn? Or should the state legislature and the governor impose a mask mandate?
I think we should have a state mandate for it.
Oh, okay. For that, you want state control, but when it comes to residency requirements, you want
we have a lot of state laws, okay? And I think one of them in a public health crisis should be a state mask mandate, which a lot of states
and
have.
Homicides are not a public health crisis, right?
What's that?
And homicides are not a public health crisis?
We're talking about the residency rule. We're not talking about homicides. And again, where the point is, it's on the ballot. It'd be one thing if it was just nothing was happening. It's on the ballot, and now the voters theoretically.
We all agree that.
You're absolving Mayor Cruzen.
No, I'm not. I don't think she was right to ask, but the legislature didn't have to act on her request. There were the city, every legislator from St. Louis spoke against it. They did not. The Republicans. It's not like everybody down there accepted it. All of the African American legislators opposed this imposition of its will. I'm telling you.
These are the same, Ray. These are the same African American legislators that didn't have the foresight to see that it is a bad time to ask for a special session on crime when the governor doesn't have anything else to run on except for I'm tough on crime. So then when he comes up with all of these cockamamie ideas, then the black ladies are like, well, we didn't know, we disagree. I said, like, well, look, both the mayor on this issue, black legislators on the special crime session, they asked a question as attorneys that they didn't already know the answer to, and they tell you in legal one-on-one, never do that. because you're going to get something you didn't expect. They should have expected it. And so thus, I don't absolve the mayor, and then I don't absolve the legislators.
Let me try it. Charlie, the Black Legislative Caucus, which, by the way, includes the one Republican, Shamed Dogan, was unified, and all they were asking to have addressed was the low-hanging fruit that supposedly everybody agreed about after the George Floyd murder. They wanted the basic stuff, nothing over the top, no defund the police stuff. Just
they didn't have the foresight to see what was going to happen. I'm not excusing them.
Alvin, that's ridiculous. He wasn't going to let this opportunity to. All Parson was doing was being able to grandstand on crime. If the Black legislators had
grandstand on crime, he's trying to end crime. Why is that grandstanding?
Because he didn't care about the vote.
I agree. But if Black legislators had not called for a special crime session, there would not have been a special crime session.
All right, speaking of crime in Jeff City, I want to move to Bill McClellan because Jill Shoup, the state lawmaker, is challenging Ann Wagner for her seat in Congress. And those supporting Wagner have gone after Shoup for voting in certain ways. For example, she was for removing sex offenders from the sex offender registry if they committed their sex offense under the age of 18, Bill. She did not want citizenship added to the sex offender registry. Also, she did not want undocumented sex offenders to be reported to federal officials. And she also wanted, I don't agree with this one, juries to know about a sex offender's previous record, criminal or otherwise. I'm not sure that's constitutional.
Well, no, that's not quite right. She didn't want the prosecution to be able to bring up cases in which the accused had not been charged.
Okay, very well.
Right.
So,
what I
this
thought
is her voting record. Isn't it fair for Wagner to bring this up?
Oh, I found the whole thing very Alice in Wonderland-like. I mean, the very first one you mentioned, Charlie, was the big one about people under the age of 18 when they're charged. It was the finest moment of the legislature that I can recall, where the people saying this isn't fair, and some of these young people at 17 years old, they shouldn't be sentenced to a lifetime on the registry, and the legislators actually listened and thought that it was a reasonable argument. And the people then said, the only way we can have this is with a consensus, because if it's a divided issue, nobody wants to die on that hill. And unbelievably, the House voted unanimously to do this. And the Senate was like 28-4, including then Senator Parson, to give these young people a second chance. It was a great moment in the House, and it never got into law because Governor Nixon vetoed it. And I always thought for political reasons, he didn't want that hanging over him. But here it was the finest moment in Jefferson City that I can recall. And Ann Wagner is going after Jill Shoup for, sex offenders into your neighborhoods. I think it's why the system doesn't work.
And it's not Alice in Wonderland. I agree with every word Bill has said, except it's less Alice in Wonderland than running like Trump. And I don't think that that's a very good look for her. As you know, and I've been whining about this on this program for over a year, I felt the Democratic Party has let Ann Wagner off the hook for not calling to her attention more repeatedly, cornering her on all the times the president has done stuff that offends suburban voters, or as he likes to call them, suburban housewives. And I do feel that for her to take this tone, and it's such an obvious cheap shot that people can see through what a cheap shot it is. Jill Shoup is one of the most decent people you ever met.
Well, let's not turn into a commercial for Jill Shoup, but I thought the commercial was wrong.
I just think, firstly, I'm the most decent person any of you know. But if I ran for office, I would expect, them to, find where I got a speeding ticket, and then for some reason that would turn into I was one of these people on Washington Avenue going crazy. on Thursday nights. I mean, that's why I'm not in politics, because it's dirty and it's nasty now. So I'm not surprised.
Oh, I'm not surprised.
This is not dirty and nasty. They went after her voting record, and you may agree with it, you may disagree with it.
Well, no, I'm saying you can construe anything any way you want to.
But you're talking about a Democratic governor who vetoed it, right?
Yeah.
Sure.
Okay.
Well, he's not on a ballot, though. And I wasn't trying to make, I agree with Alvin. I'm not surprised at all. Politics ain't beanbag. I get that.
No.
My point is,
but this is not dirty.
I don't think it's a productive tone.
Well, I think it's not dirty, Charlie, as much as distorting something. The legislature coming together and doing something together and distorting that when really they could have a great debate because they're very different people.
How about you, Bill McClellan? I want to ask you about the head of the jail in St. Louis County has left his position. He's Raul Banasco, and I haven't really followed him all that carefully, but 55 staffers and nurses and corrections officers signed something saying that he should go, which does mean a lot. On the other hand, that jail has been so poorly run by the nurses and the corrections officers. Don't you really wonder whose side you should be on in this case?
No, I don't. I mean, my heart just goes out to 155 workers signing a complaint, having a little coup d'etat against the boss who was hired in a national search. And I don't have a lot of faith in these national searches. You got somebody who interviews well. So if 155 people at the jail write a letter saying they want him gone, I'm saying good for the workers.
And I don't think this issue is over by a long shot because I know the folks on the county council are really aghast. And to me, it's just one more example. We're past the election, so this isn't said on behalf of Jake Zimmerman or Mark Mantovani, but it's another day in Sam Page land. And it's been one, whether it's going back to the Keith Wildhaber thing or the morgue or 1,000 other things, it's another train wreck. And it coincides with a lack of oversight that we all called out when it came to the COVID money. And in this case, it's like the legislature, I know the county council is very upset about this, and they feel like they
Charlie,
unfortunately, we're out of time, everybody. That's it.
All right.
Save your thoughts for next week because we'll be back next Thursday at the regular time and then at the regular times after that. Everybody, thanks so much for joining us on the 9 Network. See you next week. Stay safe.
Charlie, if I run against you, Moline Acres is going to be the Watergate.
Donnybrook is made possible by the members of the 9 Network.